come to the end of another week of the Young Turks. I am Johnny Rowe, joined by the same duo as last time, actually. The last time I was on with either of you, it was with both Jimmy and Ron. Welcome back to the panel.
Together, so we can drive together. We both live in Pasadena.
Mm-hmm. So you commute?
And
yes. Hey, look, that's green.
We're saving the earth.
Saving some carbon emissions. I'm glad that you guys are here because this has been, as is so often the case, an interesting 48 hours in the news.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up and you just don't know what you're going to be talking about. Somebody tweeted, hey, remember when we were talking about Oprah running for president? That feels like a year ago. And it's only been a week. So guess what we're going to be talking about on the show today? I mean, other stuff as well, but the thing that you're thinking of now is what we're going to start with. Yesterday, Donald Trump did what he does. He denigrated entire countries and communities by wondering aloud during an official meeting where there were people, some of whom were his political opponents and likely to squeal, why we should take immigrants from, quote, shithole countries in Africa and the Caribbean. Multiple times he said that. Again, this was not like while he's sitting in bed with a cheeseburger, like watching Fox News. He was with Republican and Democratic senators and their staff, and so that came out. Now, he is going to deny that he said that, and so he tweeted this morning. The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA, because what he cares about is the dreamers. He wants to help the dreamers. He went on to say, never said anything derogatory about Haitians other than Haiti is obviously a very poor and troubled country. Never said, quote, take them out. Fact check, he did say that. Made up by Dems. I have a wonderful relationship with Haitians. Probably should record future meetings. Unfortunately, no trust. It usually works out well when presidents start recording all their meetings, historically. But yeah, so he is denying it. So let's turn to one of the individuals that was at the meeting. This is Senator Dick Durbin.
As Senator Graham made his presentation, the president interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comments, said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are, but I cannot believe that in the history of the White House and that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I've not read one of them that's inaccurate.
I disagree in part. Maybe they've never literally said shithole countries, but I'm sure presidents historically have said some pretty awful stuff.
Have you ever heard those recordings of Nixon or LBJ? Yeah. Or he's talking to his tailor. He's like talking about a bunghole. You know what I mean?
That's one of the ones
LBJ.
that stood out. Yeah, yeah. So he might not have said shithole, but he said bunghole. Sure. So similar, I guess. But in this next clip, you're going to see a little bit more of specifically what he said, and again, specifically about Haitians.
To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true. He said these hateful things, and he said them repeatedly. When the question was raised about Haitians, for example, we have a group that have temporary protected status in the United States because they were the victims of crises, disasters, political upheaval. The largest group is El Salvador, the second is Honduran, and the third is Haitian. And when I mentioned that fact to him, is that Haitians, do we need more Haitians?
And suggested perhaps, fully at random, that perhaps instead we could have more people from Norway. Just coincidentally, it was Norway, which I spent 6 weeks in, I think, this year, and was a lovely country full of very inviting people who have a political and economic system that I would love for our country to move much closer to. Yeah, I was going to say, but are also notably quite white, although not universally, much more so than Haiti, perhaps. So that could have tied into why he suggested Norway.
Well, I was going to ask, was everybody you met itching to come here? Or were they all like, how can we get to the United States? I went to the doctor and didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
And I really feel like, well, this isn't freedom at all.
And it made me feel like a freeloader when I walked out without going bankrupt. And so I want to feel like I'm invested in the system. No, and in fact, apparently last year, only 500 Norwegians came to America to live here, which is obviously small and was 10% lower than the year before.
If Trump is supposed to have dementia, how come he always remembers to be racist every day?
That's a good Checkmate.
So I think that's the last thing to go.
Oh, the racism? That's the last thing. The racist stuff. Well, one way that might play in is supposedly everybody says that he repeats stuff a lot, the same thing over and over and over, and increasingly now in smaller periods of time, which might mean that him repeatedly saying they're shithole countries isn't technically as bad as if we repeatedly say it, because I have to make an effort to say the same thing over and over, but if he's just addled, then maybe he's just a run-of-the-mill racist and not an especially terrible racist.
I'll just say this, that I really am shocked to find out he's really a racist.
Really?
He's been a racist since the moment he opened his mouth. He chased Barack Obama around for 4 years asking for his long-form birth certificate. Mexicans are rapists. Muslims chaired 9/11. I mean, you can't be a good judge if you're a Mexican. All the whole...
Some of the highlights.
Central Park 5. Central Park housing practices. It's not like there weren't any clues. There's good Nazis.
Yeah.
I mean,
good people on both sides. And so I totally agree. I think the reason that this one stands out a little bit is not for specifically what he said, but because people in the mainstream media who fight as hard as possible to not state the obvious are starting to state the obvious a little bit. So, Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon were going on saying, like, okay, we got to be honest. These are racist comments. Whereas a lot of the stuff that you've listed there, people bend over backwards to try to excuse or to say, we disagree and everything, but there are honorable politicians on both sides and everything. So if this stands out, then good. And it should, because this is particular racism. I mean, some of the other examples you gave are good for this too, but this is not just a bad comment. This directly impacts the political discussion that they're having in their meetings right now. What sorts of groups will get legal protections? Which sorts of groups will be prioritized or unprioritized when it comes to our immigration policy? I mean, this affects potentially how, when he goes abroad, the diplomacy we have, deals that we make with other countries. If he thinks whole regions of the world are shitholes, then what happens when we try to enlist those countries in climate-related deals, security deals, and things like that? Economic deals, trade deals.
This will ultimately help Trump with his base.
I agree.
Probably half the country. So
I think I've said 37%. I hope it's not half. You think it's half?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a lot of people who are racist who didn't vote for Trump, I bet. Or some.
Yeah, that's possible.
And this will only help him. This will only, because it kind of makes me giggle when we talk about, he called it a shithole. Why are people from shithole countries coming? And what makes me laugh, because he talks exactly like all the guys that I used to work with, to grow up with. My brother used to be a bricklayer, and that's how those guys talk. And so all across the country right now, there are those guys going, he told the truth. People are getting on him.
It's like me.
That's what they're possible. So he's saying, oh, come on, Haiti's a shithole. That's what people are saying. Come on, it is a shit. You want to go live there? That's what people are saying right now. So it makes Trump look like a truth teller, and he's getting shit on by the liberal elite. That's what it looks like to them.
Even though, of course, labeling these countries shitholes because they're not as fancy as his golden thrones is a pretty damn elitist thing to say in the first place.
If you were drunk and you were throwing up in Trump's penthouse apartment, you'd wake up thrown up in a gold toilet. You're like, am I at Trump's house or the Vatican?
I throw up in so many of those.
Either way, it's an interesting place to be. But where am I exactly?
The only way I'll disagree with you, I do think that it will help him, and it'll especially help him after he's received some criticism earlier this week that he wasn't sufficiently extreme enough when it came to immigration. This helps to fix some of that for him. But it's also possible, as has been the case a couple of times last year, that his public comments, or in this case private comments that have been revealed, could be used by judges to potentially influence whether they allow or don't allow some of his executive orders or legislation. I mean, his previous comments about Muslims were used several times to strike down the Muslim ban. So maybe this could hurt him in terms of that.
So there could be like a silver lining to this horrible public racism. Right?
Yeah, there's a silver lining to the shithole that we're in as a society right now.
Well, what bothers me is this kind of reminds me of a little while ago when the tax bill came out, and the corporate media, you saw about 16 or 17 headlines about Flynn that day, and one about the tax bill. Similarly, you saw about, I don't even know how many headlines about shithole, and a bunch of cable news reporters were probably really geeking out. They could say shithole on the air and no one could do anything about it. Simultaneously,
we do that all the time if we want.
True, maybe we take it for granted, but simultaneously, the surveillance bill came out, and were more privacy protections there? No, they went ahead and did that, and 55 Democrats went along with that too,
included the Democratic leadership.
Mm-hmm. So the so-called resistance that say Trump is a traitor and Trump is this, well, you just allowed this to continue. You allow the guy that brags about going into a woman's changing room be able to look up any citizen's information that he wants.
Probably to find a nude woman. Yeah. So exactly. I do think it was covered, but those sorts of arguments were not included in the coverage I saw.
Yes.
Like it's, hey, it passed, but not, here's what the stakes are, here's the historic argument we've had over this.
Right.
That's why people turn to places like TYT. So we can have that conversation.
Thank God. So Dick Durbin, instead of talking about shithole, and he really said something racist, we already know he is, should be out there today talking about how horrible it is that we live in a surveillance state, that we have no protections of the Fourth Amendment, that Edward Snowden was right, and that we need to give privacy back to Americans, especially when we have an existential threat in the White House like Donald Trump. Who knows what kind of nefarious jig. That's not what he's saying. Why? Because he went along with it. So you can't say Trump is an existential threat and then vote to give him spy powers on unlimited spy powers on everybody. So when Democrats tell you that Trump is an existential threat, they are either bullshitting you or they don't give a fuck about you, because they don't care if they're going to give away all your secrets, all your privacy, all your constitutional rights to a goddamn megalomaniac fucking guy like Trump. They don't care. So it's one or the other. Either they're bullshitting you that he's an existential threat, or they don't give a fuck.
Or I would argue those powers shouldn't be given to any president, whether they're megamaniacal or not.
It's a tough word to say.
A good president, I agree. I don't want Bernie Sanders to be able to spy on anybody in a country that he wants.
So that's why aren't the Democrats standing up? Why wouldn't they do that?
Because this is one of the areas where there's far less distinction between the parties, unfortunately.
Why do you think
in terms of military intelligence, I think partially it's the donors, I think partially, but also I think ideologically they've been co-opted and they actually believe that these things are necessary. I think that they're 100% wrong, but I think some of them believe it. And then the other part is that they get tons of money from the military-industrial complex to back these sorts of things.
Yes, that's the problem. So the exact reason why I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, the exact reason why I voted for Jill Stein, is because there's no way to vote against the surveillance state. There's no way to vote against Booz Allen getting billions of dollars. There's no way to vote against the government invading my privacy. There's no way to vote against constitutional trampling by the government. And so that's why I couldn't vote for them, because no matter who you voted for, you're going to get a surveillance state. You're going to get more war. You're going to get less freedom, less liberty, and more corporate bullshit. So we got to stop voting for the lesser of two evils. Like all the unions agree with me now, by the way. All the unions got together a few months ago, and they said we got to stop this. So this is what the Democrats should be talking about today, is how we are living in a surveillance state, and how we need to get the constitutional protections back in our country. But they're not talking about that. Why? Because they're just as corrupt.
So as you pointed out, people might not be all that shocked to find out that Donald Trump is a racist, although, again, the media all too often doesn't label him that. But it wasn't just him. One of the things that's, I think, good about this particular situation is, after it came out that he said it, a lot of people, both in the right-wing media, but also politicians, had an opportunity to either denounce him or not. And a lot of the pundits have lined up and said, no, we too agree with this. And whether they're on TV or they're writers or they're, whatever, a lot of them are saying that they also believe this. Some, however, are just being cowardly about it. So while Dick Durbin was at the meeting, and he remembers what was said, Senators Tom Cotton and David Perdue said they, quote, do not recall the president making those remarks, which I believe is one of two things. Either they're lying and they know what he said, and it's a stupid, cowardly lie because they know it's going to be confirmed anyway, or they so agree with these sorts of thoughts and find them to be so innocuous and run-of-the-mill that they didn't even notice it when it happened. It was just like, oh, yeah, that happened. I agree, President. Why do we need Haitians? But I know some people watching the show might think that we are too quick to label people as racists. And even though you've already given a number of great examples of past statements, just in case, here's a couple of other things, some of which came out today. This is a story, I believe the New York Times, or NBC News came out with this. A career intelligence analyst who is an expert in hostage policy stood before President Donald Trump in the Oval Office last fall. It was her first time meeting the president, and when she was done briefing him, he had a question for her. Where are you from? The president asked. New York, she replied. Trump was unsatisfied and asked again. She offered that she, too, was from Manhattan, like he is. He wanted to know where, quote, your people are from. According to officials who spoke under condition of anonymity, after the analyst revealed that her parents are Korean, Trump turned to an advisor in the room and asked why the pretty Korean lady isn't negotiating with North Korea on his administration's behalf. Basically creating the situation that many people have unfortunately had to deal with old school racists like this, where, well, yeah, I know you're from Milwaukee, but where are you from? Also, by the way, according to the New York Times, Trump said during a meeting in June that Haitians, quote, all have AIDS, which we have looked into, and you will be pleased to find out is not actually the case. They don't all have AIDS. And during that same interview, Trump said that Nigerian immigrants wouldn't ever, quote, go back to their huts in Africa. But please tell us how we are too quick to label people as racist and we're just snowflakes. Come on. Anyway, now that, you know what?
We've got Trump asked me if I was in the White House, Trump would say, hey, Jimmy Dore, where are you from? And I would say, Chicago. And he'd go, no, where are you from? And I would go, so he's wanting me to say Ireland?
Yes.
I would never say Ireland. That would never come across my mind.
And he would never expect you to.
Oh, okay.
Never. We're from wherever, okay? It's very local where we're from. Anyway, we do have to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to have the international reaction. So outside of just what he said, what effect could this have on our foreign policy? We're going to break that down when we come back from this break.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
The Democrats who voted to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this.
The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels.
Not freak out. All right, post-game here in Studio B. It's a green screen, Magico Internet Television.
Oh, a lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of...
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do some. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna. Yeah. When we're off the air, I'm going to be like, how is this going to work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
You're like, at some point, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I moved down to La Jolla for a
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean, why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. Why? I don't know why. I was reading. It's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see it.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship. We don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
you are saying he can't do his job because of his race. Is that not the definition of racism? I don't think so at all.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We were so engaged in conversation, I completely forgot I was supposed to be checking this, so give me one
we were talking about, I got a screener of the Louis C.K. movie called I Love You, Daddy.
Did you really get a screener?
And, yeah.
They're handing out screeners?
Well, before the movie.
Oh, okay.
So I got it, and I give it, sometimes give stars, thumbs up. I give it 2 jerks.
2 jerks off rather than up.
Yeah, 2 jerks off. That should be Louis. He should go into the movie reviewing business, and that would be his thing. I give it 3. Right? That would be the 3 jerks. That'd be great.
So they pulled the movie, and I understand that. I feel bad for the other people in the movie.
Me too.
They made a movie thinking, hey, this Louis C.K.'s in this. This is going to be huge. And nothing.
And then, yeah, right?
I mean, I guess they got paid, but they get no exposure for it. And to some extent, people might think, well, why were they working with him or something? That's just a shitty situation to put those people in.
Well, that was before everyone... That's before he admitted it.
Yes, that's true.
So he was still in denial mode and still producing Tig's show and shit, right? Mm-hmm. So people were like, well, he's producing Tig, he must be okay.
Okay, so tweets. Let's see. Oh, Jeff Waldorf tweets in, name we're all familiar with. Jimmy Dore, Ron Falcone, and John Idarola on TYT. Now that's a power pick. Thank you. And let's see. Gabby says, yes. I love it when John hosts the Friday Power Panel. More. Well, thank you, Gabby. As long as you tweet things like that, I will read them. But anyway, let's jump back in the news. Now that it's been established what Donald Trump said, much more importantly, what do both diplomats and governments around the world actually think about this? What is likely to happen as a result of his comments, if anything? Well, first of all, and perhaps most importantly, the AP put out a statement saying that the Haitian government said Trump migration comment, as reported, reflects, quote, racist view of the Haitian community. So that's going to create some awkward meetings, I'm sure. The African Union Continental Body told the Associated Press it was frankly alarmed by Trump's comment, and a spokesperson put out a comment saying, given the historical reality of how many Africans arrived in the United States as slaves, this statement flies in the face of all accepted behavior and practice. This is particularly surprising as the United States of America remains a global example of how migration gave birth to a nation built on strong values of diversity and opportunity. Although I would add, yes, but in constant conflict historically with absolutely retrograde xenophobic views about other communities, unfortunately. South Africa's ruling African National Congress called Trump's comments extremely offensive, and the government of Botswana put out this press release, saying the Botswana government has also inquired from the U.S. government through the ambassador to clarify if Botswana is regarded as a shithole country, given that there are Botswana nationals residing in the U.S., and also that some of Botswana may wish to visit the U.S. So, I mean, I'm sure at some point, perhaps, things can be paved over. But a lot of these places probably had reason, as we've laid out, to be cautious about Trump and his administration anyway.
How did we pave over Honduras? How did we pave over what the Clinton Foundation did in Haiti? How do we pave over Iraq? How do we pave over Libya, Afghanistan, Syria,
culturally,
Niger? How do we pave over? Somehow we pave over all that shit, but Trump says some fucking crazy shit, and this is the end
I would say in addition to those previous things, then.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just, like what I'm trying to say is, again, this is the establishment focusing on bullshit instead of focusing on real shit. And
well, I would say in this particular case, this is both people in this country and also governments responding to yet another example, and a particularly blatant one that feels very old-fashioned, of the sort of racism in the incidents that you've talked about.
We're doing xenophobia nonstop in the United States against Russia. Then NBC News just did a whole segment on Anchor Baby. He's from Russia. Can you imagine if they did a segment on anchor babies from Mexico? Everybody would be up in arms, right?
Yeah.
But they're not.
Government's different than criticizing Russia.
I agree. No problem with, yes, no problem. But, it's gone to 100% xenophobia, where now Michael Tracy's reporting it. Did you meet anyone who was Russian? Did you eat pasta puttanesca? What the fuck is going on in this country? It's happening. And so, again, we should be attacking Trump on policy and let this stuff go away, because this helps him. And it's a distraction. And again, what we can't do right now is criticize him on the surveillance state, because both parties are going along with it, and they're doing it for money because they don't care about you, which is why Bernie Sanders ran in the first place, which is why we got Trump in the first place, because the Democrats cannot criticize Trump on real shit. They're going along with his foreign policy. They're going along with his military budget. They're going along with all his horrible stuff. I'll stop. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to... Going on that, another part of the conversation that's also getting just pushed to the side here because of Trump's shithole comments. Dick Durbin went on and on. He said shithole. He said shithole. What I wish I could have heard him or any Democrat say is how they're pushing back against the wall, and why. What kind of example are we sending to the world if this wall actually happens? You want to talk about racism? This wall is racism. This wall is a complete waste of resources, and that's the reason we're not moving on DACA, because of this wall that most people don't want. That's a total waste of resources. We don't even know how much it's going to cost. It's not going to cost. We have no idea how much it's going to cost. He's going to try to privatize everything. So basically, he's going to use this as an opportunity to use our tax dollars to make his friends richer. Nobody's screaming about that. And if this goes by and we are paying attention, it's a complete waste.
Yeah. I will agree with you that it's a distraction if someone does the one and not the other. But I hold myself to a higher standard. I mean, we criticized the FISA discussion yesterday on the show, and so now I'm just going to discuss this today. And again, I mean, every issue we have a very diverse audience in terms of ages, geographic or location, all of that, even politically to some extent. And so for some people, they're probably thinking, this is a huge distraction. I don't care about this. Talk about something else, and we will shortly. But for other people, this is very important. And so I want to make sure that we address the concerns of all different types of
I don't mean us covering
you're saying the way that it's being covered?
I'm saying
the mainstream media?
Yeah, I'm saying that we could cover the spectacle, no problem. But I'm saying the problem is what we should be covering is Dick Durbin saying something else. So we're supposed to cover Dick Durbin, and we're supposed to cover Nancy Pelosi, and we're supposed to cover this. But my thing is, why are they talking about this, Dick Durbin? Because they don't want to talk about the real thing. Yeah. They don't want to talk about policy because they don't have an agenda. They don't have a jobs program. They have no way to help the poor black women who just got Doug Jones into office in Alabama. They don't have an agenda that they want to talk about, which is why they want to talk about shithole and every other stupid thing like that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't cover it. I'm saying that the Democrats are now letting us down once again by not taking control of the conversation.
Get used to it.
I know.
I agree. And hopefully, in terms of the media, long term, as people migrate more and more to shows like this, the rest will have to catch up.
I hope so.
Or die, either way. One little historical note. Donald Trump, it turns out, actually, if you do a little bit of digging, I don't know exactly why he thinks what he thinks about Haitians, but if we want to talk about actual real-life experience, how this has affected him as a business person, as an individual, there's some interesting little footnotes. A New Yorker report found that of 64 foreign workers expected to be brought in to help staff at Mar-a-Lago, they tend to come from two countries, Haiti and Romania. So he says, do we need more Haitians? I guess in terms of Mar-a-Lago, they do. A lot of the workers come from there. And far more importantly, though, according to the BuzzFeed News, the Haitian government complained in the 1980s that former dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier laundered money stolen from the Caribbean nation's treasury by purchasing an apartment in Trump Tower. He was overthrown in 1986, but 3 years earlier, used a Panamanian shell company called Lassa Trade and Finance to buy apartment 54K in Trump's Manhattan Tower for almost $500,000. Trump signed the deed of sale. And so when it came to taking money that had been stolen from the Haitian people by a dictator, he did do that. But to be fair, that makes it seem as if he was looking for Haitian money laundering, which is not true. Federal prosecutors also charged a Russian native in 1984 with laundering the proceeds from a gasoline bootlegging operation through 5 Trump Tower condos. And much in a larger sense, Trump Taj Mahal Casino was charged under anti-money laundering regulations 106 times in 1990 and 1991 for allowing basically chip cashing out to be used to money launder. And recently, and there's been some great journalism about this, records show more than 1,300 Trump condos have been purchased through shell companies, which allow buyers to shield their finances and identities, and without a mortgage, which protects buyers from lender inquiries. Now, historically, going back to the 80s, 20% of his real estate sales have been conducted through shell companies like that. However, in the past year, 70% of buyers have used that tactic. Now, it is entirely possible that some of those individuals just don't want their name associated with Donald Trump. It's also possible that this is being used as a way to give money to Donald Trump that is then going to be repaid in government policy of some form. And obviously, historically, we have a lot of that in the form of campaign donations. But if you can just buy a multi-million-dollar condo, that's a much faster and more direct way to hand money over to a politician that you'd like to influence. So
why not just hire Trump to give a speech?
You could do that.
He'll even come to your shithole for enough money.
Yeah, the problem is that then, I mean, if you want to hide your name, having him come is going to get some press there. But let's move on to a different area of policy, not necessarily happening too much in D.C., but around the country. Republicans around the country are in the opening phases of a radical plan to change how Medicaid works for millions of Americans. So under current law, the way that Medicaid works is it's based almost entirely on your income. And the Trump administration is now telling states that they can introduce a new requirement that certain Medicaid recipients also work in order to receive health coverage through their program, which is not, historically, again, how it has worked. 10 states now have proposals pending with the Trump administration to impose some kind of work or community engagement requirement, almost all of them shockingly led by Republican legislatures and governors. I love that this is coming right off the bat of giving $1.5 trillion to some of the richest people the world has ever known. We now have to crack down on the people who make so little money that the government is subsidizing their health insurance. Now let's talk about how these might actually look in practice. So the Centers for Medicaid, basically in government, urges states to target any work requirements for non-disabled working adults. Pregnant women, the disabled, and the medically frail are expected to be exempt, according to this government organization. However, the guidance that the government released on Thursday appears to only suggest, not mandate, that those populations should be excluded from any work requirements. And so it is possible that at some point, poor women, even disabled women who are pregnant, will be expected to maintain a certain amount of employment to qualify for the health insurance money. Now, additionally, states are advised to consider a range of activities to fulfill the work requirements, including actual employment, the most obvious form, but also, what if you don't have a job and you're doing job training or volunteering or caregiving, important positions? CMS officials said states would have broad authority to decide what will actually be considered in compliance with their work requirements. So while CMS would like it to be a thing where if you're volunteering or if you're training, if you're trying to, get a job, that will count. But in practice, it might not. And this was going to be, we were going to cover this, and it was going to be sort of a hypothetical, that 10 states have this pending, except it's not hypothetical anymore. As of today, we have a state. Kentucky has become the first to receive permission to apply the work requirement. We don't know exactly what form it will come in, but that is going to affect a lot of people in Kentucky. And the worst thing about this, of course, is that it's not just sort of offensive that this is the people that they're targeting, but also that it doesn't make any sense. So the narrative that they're putting out is that all these people are freeloaders that are accepting their Medicaid, and they could be working, but goddamn them, they're not. But statistically, that doesn't actually make sense. A study in Michigan that looked at those receiving money for under Medicaid found that only 27.6% were actually out of work, not working but would work. So the vast majority already were working, and of those who weren't, 2/3 said they had a chronic physical illness, 35% said they'd been diagnosed with a mental illness, 1/4 said they had a physical or mental condition that interfered with their ability to function at least half of the time. And if you'd like to take a look at this chart, you'll see other reasons why the idea that these people are just freeloaders who are stealing government money for the sin of not wanting to die doesn't make sense on the ground. But Kentucky can now do it, and at least 9 other states are trying to in the near term.
I mean, we're in a big hole in this country, we're in a deficit, and we're in a big hole, and how are we going to get out of this hole unless we push some poor sick people in it?
to fill it up, and then you climb
over them.
You climb out of them, yeah.
So this is what I would like to see Dick Durbin talking about today, right? Because this is real ugly shit, and this has a direct impact on people's lives. And this is the demonization of the poor in this country. So it's not just rich Republicans. It's everybody has this beaten into them. Like I used to make fun of. There's a comedian. Why do people make fun of people who work at fast food places? The guy says, if you're 35 or 40 and you still work at a fast food restaurant, you're mentally stupid or something. I don't want to say the word he said. And I'm like, why do we do that? Why do people? So again, this is more of that. This is us being angry and trying to hurt people who are the poorest and the most vulnerable in our society. And that's what the people of Democrats traditionally stand up for. So it would be nice if this was a big deal today. I would like for this to be a big deal. It's mind-blowing that they're good. This is what they're going to. There's 30 million people without health care already in this country. We want to add that. We want to make that number go up a little bit.
We want to drive as many off of it as possible.
And so this is the thing you kill Trump with.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Because this is. There's no reason for this. It's absolutely gross. And when you're looking at this, like where they're squeezing these nickels and dimes out of the poorest among us, the defense budget was how much money? There was how much money just thrown at them that Trump didn't even ask for. That was extra. And
it's an extra.
We hear a lot, actually.
It's an extra $80 billion that they spent this year that they didn't need to spend over the bill budget from last year.
Yeah.
It's been said $20 billion could end homelessness in the United States. $20 billion, that's it.
But then our country would fall.
Why wouldn't
we wouldn't have the military necessary. We would only have the military necessary to kill everyone on the planet. That's the only thing that we could do then.
So isn't that something why isn't that part of the Democrats' platform? Why isn't that?
Well, it's a platform for some of them. Certainly Bernie Sanders talks a lot about it.
Right? Like that should be like their agenda. And we can do that. We could actually do that. There's cities around the country that have done that. I think even Salt Lake City is actually to zero homeless.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, or maybe just every veteran. Anyway, our veterans.
We could do that.
We can just start there, right? So, so that's why it's so crazy. We're the richest country in the face of the earth I've ever seen, and we're still trying to deny health care to the poorest and most vulnerable people in our society. And these are winning issues if you're running.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be. I mean, the idea that this is going to in any way pay for the huge cost of the tax cuts, of course it's not going to. But also, to some extent, I think the Republicans just like this sort of policy. Or, if you're on welfare, we're going to drug test you. I'm assuming you're probably on drugs and not the cool drugs that I get from the doctor. You're on poor people drugs. And so we're going to make you a drug test for that. And I think one of the reasons they do it is a lot of their voters like that stuff. They like to see, maybe I'm not well off, and it would be great to have policies that actually improve my life, but if that's not going to happen, at least I want to be able to look down on other people who are poorer than me.
Yes.
And that's what the rich have been doing throughout the history of America, is pitting people who need the most help against each other so that they don't actually get their situation improved.
Well, I think Republicans have really proven, as of recent, that they just hate the idea of health insurance. I mean, there's footage of Paul Ryan saying, the problem with health insurance is that it's actual insurance and poor people can get help.
Well,
he literally said that, not
the healthy pay for the sick,
which is the whole purpose of insurance. He's recognizing, I know what insurance is, I just hate the idea of it. I don't like it. That's why the AHCA took healthcare away from millions of people. A bill that actually is a, quote, healthcare bill that takes healthcare away from millions of people. It was like, how many millions can we exclude? So,
and still fit it in with 51 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you have one side that just hates the idea of health insurance in general, another side that just has no plan whatsoever, you have nothing to vote for. You have something to vote against. Well, these people hate healthcare. These people want to see me die in the streets. That's bad, but still don't have healthcare.
Yeah. Paul Ryan's the smart one, they say. He's the intellectual Republican. He's the wonk. I love when they use that for any politician.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a wonk. Maybe somewhere out there in a university, probably not in politics. Anyway, we do have to take our second break. When we come back, let's see. We don't normally in the first hour talk about elementary school homework assignments, but we've got, I think, a good reason to on today's show, and we'll do that when we come back from this break.
Congratulations to you
the Young Turks, and other digital media for breaking through barriers in providing information to people that we don't see on corporate television.
A really great idea that you had, and you noticed that mainstream press had no interest in covering this policy. They didn't want to talk about Medicare for all for whatever reason.
Well, we know what the reason. We don't know whatever reason. You turn on television today, what are you going to see? The pharmaceutical industry running these crazy ads. I would be nervous about taking these drugs with all of the side effects. Right. But that's another story.
Right.
But they are dependent on advertising from the pharmaceutical industry.
You're right. And, just as our politicians are bought, mainstream media is experiencing the same type of corruption. So there is a way to get around that, and that is independent media.
Really, for the first time, I think, we are going to have a town meeting devoted toward a better understanding of what Medicare for all is, to answer some of the very good questions that you raised. We're going to hear from physicians, we hear from economists. We'll hear from people who may be critical of the idea and listen to their concerns. But we will spend a significant amount of time talking about why the United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, while we spend twice as much per capita for a dysfunctional health system. That's one thing. But here's the second thing that excites me very much. Is I have believed for a very, very long time that not that corporate media is fake news. That's not what it's about. It's not that they lie about this or that. But there are major areas where, for a variety of reasons, mostly economic, they choose not to focus. Right? They're not going to focus too much about income and wealth inequality because the people who own their networks are in the 1%. And they're not going to focus on an issue like Medicare for all because of their dependency on pharmaceutical industry, advertising, and insurance company advertising. This could be the very first step in bringing millions of people into serious discussion about the serious issues facing our country with the time that we need to really go into depth about it. So I want to thank the Young Turks.
first time of the Young Turks, everybody. I once again forgot to bring this out, but I am going to bring it out, especially because tweets notwithstanding, I do want to recognize a couple of our members who allow us to have a fun show like today's. So 2 members I want to recognize, member Ben Sherman and Catherine Smith. Thank you for being TYT members, and obviously, as you, of course, know, getting access to all of the network's content to watch as you wish. Let's see. Tinkle's Deathbringer says, I wonder how far away our bizarro parallel universe is from the original universe. Yeah, I don't know exactly when we crossed over to it. And Lip and Tooth says, Donald Trump is so dumb he's his own opposition. I've never seen a professional trip over his own feet so much in my life. Dude's sharp as a bruised plum. Yeah, that's true. And actually, and I'm sure as you guys experience, because both of you produce content, so much happens nowadays that it's difficult to stay focused on something, and it's difficult to remember like the things that have come before. Like, I know that we were doing shows every day 5 years ago, but how did we have enough to talk about? I guess we found stuff. I don't know.
Well, we were looking for birth certificates and what have you.
That's true. And we wanted evidence. Okay. I mean, we're just curious. And Joe Arpaio says that he has that evidence, by the way. He does have it. Well, maybe he'll show it. Yeah. Okay, let's jump back on the news. I think it's safe to say that growing up, a lot of people probably hated their homework from time to time. But it was probably pretty rare that your homework was itself hateful. And Wisconsin has decided they're going to go something a mother posted. This is the homework from a 4th grade class. Topic, slavery. The prompt is, give 3 good reasons for slavery and 3 bad reasons. Make notes and then put them into complete sentences on a separate sheet to prepare for presenting an argument. If you go to the second one, we're going to see the lower end of that. And so the 4th grader did his job, putting out the bad reasons for slavery. Maybe you can add to that list yourself. There are several. And so the mother was obviously bothered by this, that her 4th grader was being asked to explain what a justification for slavery would be. And she said this, you wouldn't ask someone to list 3 good reasons for rape or 3 good reasons for the Holocaust. And so she was offended by this and posted the picture Monday evening after seeing her 9-year-old son Jerome struggling with his homework and, quote, looking really confused. She saw he'd already listed bad reasons for slavery, such as making them do your chores, splitting up families, and punishing them. He made sure, by the way, to mention that he is proud to be black. And she said to him, because he was having problems coming up with the good reasons, she said, just be yourself. And so he wrote, this is a 9-year-old, I can't think of any good reasons for slavery.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope that, to try to, find a positive here, I hope that mother is also proud of her son. Oh, for doing that. I mean, that's really cool that she's like, well, be yourself. And that's what he does. He's like, you know what, this is what I think. Because, he's a 4th grader. You're not, you don't really question authority much when you're that young, but this kid did, so I think that's awesome. He's going to go on to do something really cool with his life.
Yeah. I would think that assignment should be, hey, what are the 3 good reasons why elementary school teachers need cultural sensitivity training?
I can think of one. Maybe you could fill in the rest.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and so, look, this is a Wisconsin private school, and this is obviously bad. Even no context, just this is bad. They tried to explain, saying the purpose of the assignment was not in any way to have students argue that slavery is acceptable, a concept that goes against our core values and beliefs about the equality and worth of people of all races. And if somehow, sickly, this is like, hey, we want to teach them critical thinking, not this way, I would say, not this way. But the reason that I care about this and wanted to talk about this today is that even though it seems crazy to me, and maybe to you guys too, there is a continuing attempt from the right wing to rewrite the history of slavery. Not to say that it didn't happen, but to imply that we're not being fair in acknowledging all of the positives. That these people, they lived pretty good lives, and they were happy. Look, we have a picture of people singing. And it might seem crazy, but you see this all the time. People who work at some of those recreations of old-timey towns say that people come up and ask them questions. Well, wasn't it nice in some ways? Like, what did they buy for the slaves and stuff like that? And so you just need to know that this is out there in America, that this is not a small thing. A lot of people do not believe that it was a universal evil, one of the greatest stains on the history of our nation.
I have a good reason for slavery. Well, if there wasn't slavery, then black people wouldn't have the have the privilege or the to build the White House, right? So they were able to build the White House. Now they could have the pride of building the White House. So if we didn't have slavery, black people wouldn't have. By the way, Bill O'Reilly, when he tells that story, he tells you that the slaves were well fed and taken care of. That's what I like to tell you.
I had forgotten about that, but yes, he did say that.
Yep.
He also said, by the way, today, don't say shithole countries where people can hear you, because they will forget about it. That was his tweet. Not don't say it or don't believe it. He said, don't say it where people can hear you. Say it in the shower or right before an orgasm like I do. Follow my lead. So thanks, Bill. He's learned a lot since his exile, I think. Anyway.
But he really did say that thing about the slaves building.
Yeah.
They were well taken care of. And, oh, by the way, Bill, they were also bought and sold.
Mm-hmm.
They were bought and sold like cattle.
Families were broken up, and people were raped, and people were beaten and killed.
Yeah, but
they were fed.
They got a full bowl of porridge.
Yeah. It's insane. Anyway, that's just an ongoing struggle we have as a nation. Let's move on to our last story of the day. The U.S. military is now facing a new threat, and it could compromise its ability to defend our country long term. It's not North Korea. It is actually the U.S. diet.
Oh, I thought when you said that the U.S. military has a new threat, it's like, oh, people are going to start thinking rationally. Is that the threat?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
People might think rationally about what our budget should be like, as we were talking about earlier. No, we haven't reached that yet, but there is this threat. And so a study was conducted into the ability to recruit physically able Americans to serve in the military. And researchers found that it is a problem, and it's because of obesity. Researchers found the issue is particularly evident in 11 southern states: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, where recruits were found to be, quote, significantly less fit and or more likely to become injured than recruits from other U.S. States. The study concluded that these 11 states are disproportionately burdensome for military readiness and national security for two reasons. First, high obesity rates mean the candidate pool for the military is dwindling. Second, individuals with poor physical training levels prior to being recruited have an increased risk for injury during basic combat training. And that is financially consequential, because if you do train someone and because of their prior lack of physical fitness they become injured, that apparently cost the Department of Defense roughly $31,000. That was back in 2005. Probably a little higher now. And so overall, outside of the South, what does this actually look like if you're trying to recruit for the military? There are 33.4 million Americans between 17 and 24, which is historically the military's prime demographic for recruitment, but less than 30% of them are actually qualified due to an array of disqualifying factors, including poor physical fitness and obesity. And so they're still hitting their goals. Like, they say we want X number, they're getting them. But the reason is, it's related to this, actually, if you bring this up. Over 8,000 recruits received waivers for obesity and related issues in 2017, up from 6,700 in 2016. So this is a rapidly rising thing. As with all obesity-related statistics, it is getting bigger fast.
Wow. I know how, and that's got to drive Trump crazy, because I know he was so weight conscious with his beauty contestants.
He was.
Remember that?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
He's criticizing that one woman. I forgot her name, but
yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, how this actually affects the military, I don't actually care about that. But what I do care about is us. I talked about this recently. I was telling you before the show, like, we can't tell what is threatening us. We think it's terrorism, or we think it's God only knows what. But it's not. It's normal stuff. It's texting while driving. It is what we stuff in our face holes. That's what's going to kill us. It's killing us right now, slowly. Many of these people who don't qualify to join the military will end up dying for a host of metabolic-related issues, like heart disease and cardiovascular disease, all sorts of diabetes and related issues. And that's only getting worse year by year. And occasionally we have a little bit of a conversation, but not for very long. And it is killing us as a country.
Well, and I think, I agree with you. Our food culture is incredibly problematic. And I think a lot of it has to do with access. I mean, the fact that we have food deserts in a country as rich as the United States, is absolutely.
What is a food desert, Rob?
A food desert is where, like, and I don't know the specific way they designate it, but there is only so much food available within a radius. So it's like when you have a lack of grocery stores in your area,
particularly
a lot
fresh
of
food and fresh produce. It tends to be convenience stores, fast food, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of these people, they're very poor. They might not have a car. I mean, there was a report I saw a couple years ago that there was this guy had a family of 3, he had no car. He would do, 4 hours round trip to get produce for the week, and then he's not able, some of it went bad when he got home, and stuff like that. I mean, this is something that happens in the United States, and this is something that, we're not, it's easier to get food that's not as healthy, so a lot of these people, like, they're eating stuff that, it's fast not food good for them, but it's because that's all they can afford. For them, this isn't like a special treat. This is all they can afford. And it's just like the way we go about our food culture is just completely backwards. And I mean, some of the laws we have are, not even legal in other countries. And this is coming from a guy that does love the occasional processed macaroni and cheese. I know it's a treat, but I do love it. So I'm not...
And not technically food, but it's enjoyable.
Exactly, but it is enjoyable.
Yeah, as Michael Pollan says, we mostly eat edible food-like substances in this country. And this is to some extent, a government thing. I mean, how much information we get, the government puts out food guides and stuff like that, and it tends to be based off of long discredited information and leads us to eating stuff that, again, increases the chance of these things killing us. What do we subsidize in this country in terms of government dollars? We subsidize corn. And what do they make out of it? High fructose corn syrup for the most part. We could be subsidizing vegetables and things like that. And to some extent we do occasionally, but generally corn is the thing. And then specific policies, and this is something I remember when it was announced back in the Obama administration, I've rarely been as excited about a piece of government regulation as they were finally going to add to nutrition labels added sugars, which I think is one of the single most important things that causes people to not understand how unhealthy a lot of food is, because added sugars are put into almost everything in the supermarket now. And they finally said they're going to do that, and there's a period where they need to phase it in, and in the first year of Donald Trump, he said that he is going to be rescinding that. I don't know the current state. Maybe they backed off of that as they have many things, but we need to know what we're eating. Like, a lot of people don't know how bad some of this stuff is, and they can't get the information because the government is allowing companies to hide it from them.
I'm surprised that Diet Coke doesn't work. That turns out,
well, maybe some of the new flavors coming out will change that.
There's a lot of them. Maybe one of them is like a there are.
Right, they've done the studies where the people who drink Diet Coke actually get fatter than the people who don't drink the Diet Coke. So it's the Diet Coke that doesn't matter. Whatever diet's in the Diet Coke, it's not working. It's bad for you.
Yeah, it turns out, it seems like a lot of the artificial sweeteners train your body in the same way that sugar does in stuff that's bad metabolically for you. I'm not a doctor or a lawyer or a bunch of other stuff, but that's what seems to be the case.
I am a professor of weed, and so I can tell you that you come to a point when you smoke weed that it acts as an appetite suppressant, which is how I can keep my svelte figure.
Really? I've always heard the opposite.
It does. And when you first start smoking it increases your appetite like crazy. Shit I used to eat. And one time I was in college, first time I ever smoked pot in college. There was a chili bowl, right? And it came in a bread bowl, its own bowl of bread.
I like that.
All right, so I ate the chili, put it on the radiator, right, in my college dorm room. About a week later, I got high.
Oh, no.
I have nothing to eat except some French onion dip and that week-old thing, and I ate it, and goddamn, it tasted good.
Wait. Had it been on the radiator for a week?
Yeah, it was a finely aged bread bowl. Maybe 5 days. It's work week.
Yeah, wow. You eat vintage.
I was so high.
Okay.
I wish I could get that
Can I
high.
throw something out there? Like, and this is just sort of like a practical thing. Like we live in Los Angeles, a place where we do have a wealth of produce available in farmers markets and stuff like that. People that don't in rural areas, the best thing you can do to try to combat this, and it's an affordable solution.
Drink your own urine?
Drink your own urine. And
a lot of vitamins.
No, find your nearest crop share. I mean, it's the best thing you can do because then you're interacting directly with your farmer. Sometimes you can work a few hours a week in exchange for a share, and that's just the best way. I mean, this is straight from the ground to your family.
Yes. Crop share.
Crop share, yes. And this is a way,
something else.
It's a way to avoid, even like just so you're not getting GMO stuff. You don't know you're getting just fresh crops directly from your farmer, and you shake their hand and you walk away with your box.
And to the extent that you can, it can be difficult. I know people are really busy and everything, but the more you can involve yourself in not just the consumption, but the production of the food if possible, that would be great too. My current girlfriend, she no longer does, but she worked for a nonprofit that set up community gardens in economically deprived areas. And from going and working on those, I actually set up my own small one in my backyard. And if you do not have access to produce, if you have a small amount of area where you can do some gardening, it is extremely cheap. The return on the investment for what you garden for yourself monetarily is huge, and you can actually feel invested in what you're eating.
You have a backyard?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a shared backyard, but it's not my own backyard.
Oh, I thought it was your own backyard.
No, I live in a guest house, so technically it's a small piece of their backyard, but...
That's still a backyard, though. That's nice.
Technically, yeah. Yeah, it's all dirt.
I tried
we have no moisture here, but...
I tried to grow tomatoes. I tried to have my own garden. Do not have a green thumb, and they all died. I couldn't grow them.
It's difficult. A lot of good YouTube channels, by the way, of how to do urban gardening, by the way. Anyway, that was fun. We don't normally talk about some of these issues, so I was glad that we were able to.
Nice.
And great recommendations down there on the
Hey, can I tell people February 16th? It's a Friday. It's our next live Jimmy Dore show. Ron and I will be on it. It's in Burbank, California. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for tickets.
Awesome. I was actually on Santa Monica, I think, and I was going to a holiday party, and I saw your name on a billboard in front of a comedy club.
Oh, it's maybe the Comedy Store. I was there.
Maybe it was across from Red O, I think. But anyway, your name was in big letters.
The Improv.
That's the Improv. Cool. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Anna Kasparian is going to be leading the second hour. There are some awesome stories there. One bit of breaking news about some hush money for a sexual, quite misconduct case, but a case of the sexes. And we're going to talk about that when we come back from this break.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no-go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Stacks?
We're good.
Iguana? Sir, we are go for landing. Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir, I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the band firing now weeks old, and waiting in
English shots, English. What are you trying to tell me?
this joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not going to happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
Hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
Alright, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
The Trump jokes are safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations. Cameras, position, social media team. Race run follows. 10 seconds. As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is going to be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be the finest hour 2 yet.
It's what work with government exclusive signal.
Jink.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
Hey, what's up? Aaron, what do you like better? The rating or the Ravens?
Joe.
Is it a power panel? I think it is. Hey everyone, welcome to the special Friday edition of the Young Turks where we have our power panel. Super excited about this panel. Yay. Brett Ehrlich, Maytha Al-Hassan, two brilliant, fun, smart people that will help me cover these big news stories of the day.
It's reference calendar girl who loved it. I found a girl in my car. Her name was She didn't run very far. She wanted to be in it.
A while ago, we were still in like the old studio, and my favorite line between Patch was last time that was playing was that Anna and JR are kicking it all night, and it's like always makes me laugh. We've never kicked it all night. Nothing for once.
Why not?
Because we're both busy people. Like, we gotta kick. Like, come on.
I love her. The office working all out. If that ever happens, it's like you rap.
Yeah, of course that happens. I mean, especially during election season when things get crazy. Yeah.
with her.
How are you guys doing? I'm not going to touch it. I love it. Right now, I got inspiration. Thank you. Any inspiration about anything? Trump's recent Wall Street Journal interview will probably crush it because of the fact that he's our president and he is a random idiot. Okay, I'm being generous. There are other words that I could use to describe him, but this interview is crazy. 18 pages long. Excuse me. To be quite honest with you, the three Wall Street Journal journalists who sat down with him didn't even really ask many questions because he was just rambling from one topic to another. And luckily, you don't have to read the full interview because I have the most relevant parts to report to you, and then we'll analyze, discuss, have a good time. Later on in the show, hopefully if we get to it, we will discuss the fact that kids are eating detergent. So we'll get to that story later. But let's start off with the top story for my hour, which is this Wall Street Journal interview, which, by the way, was published yesterday and got very little attention because of Trump's other huge breaking news story following the country shit.
I became a rough fucker and got the
Alright, it's very proud day of reading it. Alright, let's get to it. During a lengthy interview with three journalists at the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump talked about various topics, including his relationship with Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, and how they actually happen to be good friends, and also the topic of of immigration and how he believes DACA and Dreamers are two completely different things. Now, let's start off with the topic of North Korea, something that some people have been very concerned about, considering the fact that Trump seems to continuously stoke tensions between himself and the dictator of North Korea. Here's what the Wall Street Journal asked him. Do you think North Korea is trying to drive a wedge between the two countries, between you and President Moon, of course referring to President Moon of South Korea? Trump responded with, I'll let you know within the next 12 months. Okay, buddy? And the Wall Street Journal reporter responded back, sure. Then Donald Trump continued, I will let you know. If I were them, I would try. But the difference is, I'm president. Other people aren't. And I know more about wedges than any human being that's ever lived. So I'll let you know. So I'll tell you, when you talk about driving a wedge, they also have a thing called trade. In South Korea, we have trade deficit with South Korea for $31 billion a year. That's a pretty strong bargaining chip to me. And then there was more to his answer, which I'll get to in just a second, but I feel like you're dying to jump in, Brett, so please do so.
I know more about wedges than anyone who ever lived. Sand wedges, pitching wedges. Tiger Woods has nothing on me. Salad comes in wedges sometimes. A woman's shoe. There's a wedge-type shoe. Do you think anyone else could list the number of wedges that there are? Me, the most of anyone.
No, but he thinks he knows more than anyone on any given topic. He is the most athletic. That was the running theme. That was the only thing he was consistent on throughout this entire interview. And it's now beginning to worry. The accusations regarding his mental health were unsavory. I just didn't want to speculate about his mental health. But as you read this whole interview, and just like the rambling nonsense that's taking place, I am genuinely concerned. I'm not saying that simply to insult him. I'm not saying that because I'm about Donald Trump. But this is the person who is in charge of this entire country. And in this interview, yes, there were funny moments, but more importantly, there was moments where you feel a little shocked that he's the leader, that he makes some of the most important decisions, not just for this country, but for the world. So Mika,
all raised now. And then I'll say you
background besides creating a methodology, a business methodology of building an empire based on bankruptcy, chapter 7 bankruptcy laws, right? So she just specializes in this is what this interview narrates to me. And the problem is, he doesn't want to thoroughly engage at one point. They went back and forth about something being coverage or full page coverage, and that's all he's concerned about, and that's really how superficial he engages all these topics. So again, he has all these sort of missteps. But to me, I'm dealing with people he's a narcissist, and that might be classified as some sort of psychological analysis of his, fitness to be president. But I think, again, back to Go 101, before we engage in shithole country, stable geniuses, creating hashtags, phrases that he generates, before we get more to loss, which is primetime attention as an entertainment star.
So when it comes to some of these decisions you have to make this month on aluminum, steel, the 301 case, this, that, he reads in the transcript, crosstalk. And then he just goes, for instance, at the very beginning, North Korea. About specific decisions he has to make revolving around specific policy issues that he doesn't understand and can't enumerate. The only thing it is clear to me that he has memorized, that he really knows, is, to his credit, the size of the trade deficits that we have with other countries, which he probably memorized because he knows to be like, listen, and that's what people around the world that have a understanding of we have trade deficits. They like, look at trade now. That's it. Any other numbers that he memorized are how many people went against
don't care. People say,
Right. And so he gets to how busy he is.
The next 12 months, my decision, okay, Mike? And the Wall Street Journal just goes, because you
they all say he's a coming.
I mean, it was interesting because it didn't seem as though anyone really needed to ask him any questions. You just kind of sit back and let him ramble, and he goes from one topic to another. There were moments in this interview where the reporters asked him specific questions that just flew over his head, and he continued talking about something completely different, and it was really fascinating. So, on the topic of North Korea, there was one portion of the discussion that stood out to me because it was so symbolic, or I should say indicative of Donald Trump is, where, black is white, up is down, he'll say one thing, and then they will turn around and tell you something completely different, and claim that he's still consistent on that issue. So, let's give you an example. He said, I probably have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. The Wall Street Journal responded with, just to be clear, you haven't spoken to the North Korean leader. I mean, when you say a relationship with Korea, Trump interrupts, I don't want to comment on it. I don't want to comment. I'm not saying I have or I haven't, but I just don't. And the Wall Street Journal interrupts him and says, some people would see your tweets, which are sometimes combative toward Kim Jong-un, and then Trump responds with, sure, you see that a lot with me, and then all of a sudden it's always my best friend. I can give you 20 examples. You give me 30, I'm a very flexible person.
Forget it.
I tried to give you 20 examples, and then you give me 30. Okay.
I was so scared. It looked like someone had beat her. Okay, give me an example. Then he doesn't. He wouldn't be able to.
Well, there was only one real follow-up question to his crazy, inconsistent nonsense, which drove me crazy. And we'll get to that follow-up question later. But in regard to the examples he can give of people that he goes after on Twitter and then later they become his best friends, they didn't ask him that follow-up, and that annoys me. Ask him, okay, you can give 20 examples? I'm not giving any points for that. Oh, you can't give me 3, that's fine. One example. I think that they need to really hold him accountable and have him be specific about what he's claiming, because he's gotten away with avoiding, the specific nature of his answers, from the election to the current day, and that's what drives me crazy. All right, so let's move on to another portion of this interview that I think is relevant: border security. During Donald Trump's interview with the Wall Street Journal, he was asked about a number of topics, and a huge portion of the interview focused on immigration and border security. So let's discuss what he had to say. Now, when it comes to the border wall, the Wall Street Journal asked, do you have to have a completely funded wall, or would $1.6 billion be enough? Now, that was a reference to the immigration reform legislation that was being drafted by the Gang of Six, the senators, and in that legislation was the partial funding of the wall to the tune of $1.9 billion. And here's what Trump had to say about that. Let me tell you something about the wall. So I've always said we have to have a wall. I've also said Mexico's got to pay for it. Sometimes, on occasion I'd add who's going to pay for it? Mexico. Well, they will pay for it, okay? There are many forms of payment. I could name 10 right now. Okay, so name 10.
Visa, MasterCard, shiny things. Sometimes at Chuck E. Cheese they give you tickets.
Okay, there are many forms of payment. I didn't say how. So here is the follow-up question that the Wall Street Journal asked, and I'm so glad they asked it. Could you give us an example? And here's what Trump said. They can pay for it through, as an example, they can pay for it indirectly through NAFTA. Okay, we make a good deal on NAFTA. Say I'm going to take a small percentage of that money and it's going to go toward the wall. Guess what? Mexico's paying. But here's the thing, that answer is not good enough for me. Be specific about what that NAFTA deal would entail, right? Just saying, oh, I'm going to negotiate a good deal with NAFTA, and through that good deal, I'm going to take a portion of it and it's going to pay for the wall. And they're indirect. But no, you're asking Congress, explicitly asking Congress, to give you $1.9 billion to begin funding that wall off the backs of U.S. taxpayers. That is the antithesis of what you claimed you were going to do when you were running.
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his major talking point when he was running in 2016,
Yes.
saying that if you elect me, I'll get rid of all these trade agreements, the TPP, and he held that wedge against Hillary Clinton, the fact that she had initially signed on to TPP, and he said he was going to get rid of NAFTA. And as you said, all of a sudden, now it's going to go on our backs, and the taxpayers are going to have to front the burden of something that, you know, maybe less than half asked for. I don't even know the percentage of the favorability of the wall.
But it just doesn't sell well. The idea that you are going to renegotiate NAFTA in this fantasy world and have this windfall of profit that's coming your way, who thinks that the good way to use that profit is for a wall? There's so much other stuff that's a better, easier sell for him.
Wait. Are we going to get to the vicious rivers part?
I actually, unfortunately, there was so much in this interview, so I don't have that prepared, but he did go from talking about, you know, how in the election he kept mentioning how we need to build a wall along the border, never discuss treacherous terrain, never discuss rivers or mountains, nothing. He just said, we're going to build a wall to be a great big wall, it's going to be really high. He never talked about the transparency of that wall. He never talked about anything specific, just that he was going to build this wall. It's going to be a big, beautiful wall that secures our borders. And now, all of a sudden, in this Wall Street Journal interview, he starts talking about how it's not going to be a wall along the entire border because of that treacherous terrain. Oh, shocking.
Because we got mountains.
We have mountains and we have rivers. Yeah.
Vicious River was amazing. Those mean rivers. Vicious.
So actually, I have a little bit of that. So let's go to his answer regarding this border situation. The other thing, so the wall, by the way, it's really hard to read what he says because he speaks in a strange way. The other thing, so the wall's never meant to be 2,100 miles long. We have mountains that are far better than a wall. We have violent rivers that nobody goes near. We have areas, and then he just kind of stops himself. Now on the wall, we have cameras, and we have highly sophisticated equipment, but the wall, the Border Patrol tells me the other ways more expensive. It's not less expensive. We have to have vision through the wall. Okay. So,
I mean, you could go to an area that doesn't have a wall and just say, Mr. President, do you like the wall? It's a transparent wall, just like you asked. You can see right through it.
This is going to be state-of-the-art wall.
I love that.
This is going to, let's go to the graphic, 68. This is his actual statement. This is a transcript of what he told the Wall Street Journal. This is going to be state-of-the-art wall. This will be state-of-the-art. But I can fully understand why you'd have to have vision. I'd like to be able to see 300 or 400 yards instead of where at a wall. We have no idea who's on the other side. Does this make sense, or am I just wasting my time? It does not make sense. You are wasting everyone's time. Just to answer.
I mean, if it's longer than a tweet, it's probably really hard for him to construct a sentence.
No, but okay. So he has a communications director, as all presidents do and should have. His communications director is Hope Hicks. We've spoken about her on the show before. And so he apparently turned to her for validation during this portion of the question and answer. And Hope Hicks validated him by saying the following, and this is an exact transcript of what she said. It's what you've always talked. It's consistent with what you've always said.
That's her job.
Yeah. She's a communications director for the President of the United States. It's what you've always talked. I'm not one of these people who sits there and nitpicks grammar and spelling, and I get it, that's annoying. But, I mean, your communications director should have the ability to effectively communicate and, in turn, help you effectively communicate.
You have a dog, yeah?
Yes, he's the best thing.
And how do you talk to your dog?
Like a baby. Yeah.
This has happened to Hope Hicks with the president. You know how if you're in a relationship, you have this shorthand, this weird talking, and some of their speech patterns.
Yes.
subconsciously make their way into how you talk, Hope Hicks is probably going home and going like, oh my God, I can't put sentences together anymore because I spend so much time around that guy.
Yeah.
It's what you've always taught.
It's what he's always taught.
Yeah.
There is something that has happened. So you go to your computer, open up or your iPad or your cell phone, and you open up this transcript and you start reading. There will come a time when you get really tired of reading. That's when you need to continue. That's also where the president gets really tired of focusing. And he hasn't focused much already, but that's when it starts to get batshit crazy.
Yes.
It starts to make even less sense. I want to tell you what, the reason I'm shuffling my papers is because I dropped them. And they all got out of order. I put them together in a random order, and they don't make less sense than they did when they were
I was just going to say, it probably is the same kind of consistency or inconsistency.
You're right. And so, there was the border talk, and then he wants to talk a little bit about DACA. And this really stood out to me because he believes that there is a difference between the DACA demographic and Dreamers. He thinks those are two completely different groups. Don't believe me? Here's what he had to say. There's a big difference, first of all, there's a big difference between DACA and Dreamers, okay? Dreamers are different, and I want American kids to be dreamers also, by the way. I want American kids to be dreamers also. But there's a big difference between DACA and Dreamers, and a lot of times when I was with certain Democrats, they kept using the word dreamer. I said, please, use the word DACA. It's a totally different word.
Someone told him this. Someone said this. There's the DREAM Act and there's DACA. And he was like, oh, really? I'm going to run with that. Doesn't understand, the fundamental anything. That's what it is. Someone said something similar to this to him. He took a thread wrong, and then and he was called out on it, and now he wants to call everyone else out on it. It's like when you teach your kid a lesson, and then you hear them use your words telling someone else that they're wrong. And you're like, I didn't really understand what I was talking about, but at least they seem to be learning something.
Yeah, this really, really concerns me. And again, it's gone from just utter disdain toward him, and a lot of the focus for my perception was about how deplorable he is, right? But you read this interview, and again, I want to really emphasize that it concerns me. And this is not the mind of someone who's focused, who's knowledgeable, who's competent, who's fit for office. I just really worry that he is, pushing for legislation and orchestrating certain policies when he has absolutely no understanding of the fundamentals of those policies.
Right. He's got no clue. He isn't able to learn, and he has no interest in learning.
His interest is just being a showman. And the other thing that comes across with this is his obsession with Obama. I've never heard a leader talk about the previous administration so much and size themselves up to it as much as Trump seems to think is necessary. Again, it's part of the inconsistent ramblings that make up or constitute the totality of this piece. He just throws in, well, that's different than the Obama administration.
There's this weird obsession of sizing himself up compared to President Obama. And that's why he undoes everything that Obama has done.
Yeah,
that's why he, immediately goes back to, look at what I was able to accomplish. Look what happened in the stock market under my administration versus the stock market under Obama's administration. There's a lot of emphasis on comparing himself to Obama throughout this entire interview. And it's not exclusively evident in this interview. You see it all the time. He does it all the time.
Well, I think this also speaks volumes with how invisible sometimes the white supremacist, racist rhetoric is. Why is he sizing himself up against the Obama administration? Because that was the big rallying cry that happened in 2008 when he got elected. It was a white supremacist that convened and said, okay, we need a strategy to put ourselves in office, to embolden ourselves through a Tea Party, and then eventually elect a candidate. So he knows that this is what speaks to them, what resonates with them, And he then has become very invested in the idea that he has to outperform this man.
So there's one more portion that I want to talk about. It's brief, so let's get to that. During Donald Trump's interview with the Wall Street Journal, he talked a little bit about how awesome he is, or at least how awesome he thinks he is, and how incredibly successful he's been throughout his life. Now, there was no question asked by the reporters in regard to his success. In fact, the question that prompted Trump's ego-boosting rant was as follows. Mr. President, you made reference to the book Steve Bannon, and then Trump interrupts and says, so, I was successful. I was always the best athlete. People don't know that. But I was successful at everything I ever did. And then I run for president. First time, no, not 3 times, not 6 times. I ran for president first time, and lo and behold, I win. And then people say, oh, is he a smart person? I'm smarter than all of them put together, but they can't admit it. They had a bad year.
See, but this is exactly what I'm saying. This kind of narcissism, it feeds off of attention. It doesn't matter if it's negative attention. It doesn't matter if it's positive attention. As long as his name remains relevant, as long as we're consistently talking about him, I know I'm doing that. I'm having a self-reflexive moment. Then I know there's a little a resistance to confront this because we do have to hold him accountable to his craziness, that's for sure. But you saw what happened when there was a rallying cry to put him at odds with Bannon. And that was a simple strategy. They used the phrase President Bannon, and that got to him, that got under his skin.
That's a great point, actually.
And what would happen if, this is my question, after sifting through 18 pages of rambles and then seeing his tweets constantly pop up, what would happen if the media decided to ignore him for a week? If there was some sort of pledge, that would be...
I have a I don't want to say better strategy, but an alternative strategy.
I want to hear it.
We can try both.
I can also judge.
In an ideal, I win all of the strategy ideas. Okay, everyone thinks that I'm the best athlete and I have the best strategy ideas. Lo and behold, I'm going to win strategy ideas. Okay, no, but I think it would be much more interesting if the media ignored all of his provocative tweets and his provocative statements and only hyper-focused on policy-related issues, and that's it.
Exactly. And not tying it to his name, maybe tying it to an administration. Just leave his name out. What would that look like? What would that do?
So let's just say, instead of that, we'll just say President McConnell.
Yeah.
Just go through it until he's gotten rid of everybody. Every day, it's another person who's better.
No, but that's what the takeaway I loved from Fire and Fury. Nobody knows who's running the show. And so we could just assign that role to each character until everybody is knocked off.
Another crazy thing about this interview is, we've seen the tweets and they're each by themselves. This is the first time I've really seen all the nonsense in one place for such an extended
That's true.
period.
This is his compendium.
So you could think that, he goes away, he looks at his day, he's like, what one thing can I say to drive the news cycle now? That was my theory. Is he sits there and he looks, he's like, all right, here's today what I choose. But no, I think it's just a default setting where any and all things that jump into his mind, he will run through his personal filter of, I'm the best, right? Thus, ... and he just chucks it out at everything.
I think that he doesn't really have a filter. I mean, he likes to put that, that rosy, I'm better than everyone, perspective on himself, that's for sure. But I think more than anything, he just speaks as he's thinking. Whatever's coming to his mind, he just says it. Whereas I think most people give themselves a beat to really think about what's about to come out of their mouths.
But I think there's a lot of politicians who you'll see, they're the ones who don't answer the question the same way every time.
Mm-hmm.
When it's asked, did you order the code red, they'll be like, it was important that we made a decision at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And and you're just like, wait, what are you talking about? And that's their filter, is like, I bring it in, I put it through this way. Trump, he does have a filter, or at least he's just like a function. It comes in this way, he changes it, and it goes out through his filter, which is
I am the best. I'm a total narcissist, and what comes into my mind, but it's always through that filter.
Right, I'm incredibly insecure, and what do I have to do to reverse these feelings within me?
It's scary stuff. We have to take a break, but stick around when we come back.
Probably because he ran up
some news has emerged regarding Trump paying a former adult film actress some hush money due to their extramarital relationship. And later on, Jeff Sessions bringing debtors' prisons back to America. I'll give you the details on that and more.
What now? To be fair, Breath of the Wild had ramped up.
Get out of here. Yes, not the
Your son Sanders, I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to ask you a policy question.
They love your system as it is. They want enormously rich off the system that exists for us.
This year,
oh my God,
isn't working.
So what the real Mountain Dew witch is about is trying to create a work stuff for people on top.
So what's happening in the Democratic Party is what's going to happen in the general election. We would have the person who represents workers and the people and the voters, and then the Republicans who would represent business. And we'd have a freaking election.
And instead of focusing on issues that actually matter to millennial voters, for instance, we're focusing on non-issues in the country. The fear-mongering about Muslims and terrorism.
That voice in the wilderness, it created a ripple effect, which then now is a tidal wave as we stand right now. I love this shit. We're going to rock the boat. We're going to be counter-establishment. We're going to tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're going to keep it real with that.
Membership gives us so much holistic freedom. It's incredible. JoyceNetwork.com/join.
What's J and A? You guys share a mug?
Yeah. We'll take our alcohol black.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, I'm right-handed and Arthur's left-handed, so our lips don't even touch the same area. It's perfect. No. I'm not left-handed. What do you mean? I seen you type with your left hand. Yeah, also with my right hand. That's how typing works.
The road ahead is long and unforgiving.
It's the hammer! Oh my goodness. Yo! Let's get it! Dude, out of my face. Oh my god, Toy Story. Yo, that's it. That's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing we started to throw away. It's a drill. Yo. Dude, what do you add, Buzz? You have 5 people on your team now. This is insane. This is insane. Yo, get it. Get it. Get it. Oh. Yo. Yo. Dude. Oh. Let's get it. Yeah. Yo. Let's get it. Dude. Oh my God. Yo. Next. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. Dude, they're condoms. Oh, get him. Dude, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this nonsense. Yo! Oh my God. I love it. Oh my God. Go!
I wanted to do just a quick reminder that on January 23rd, something super exciting is going to happen, and we will be streaming it on our Facebook page. Bernie Sanders will do a Medicare for All town hall, and
That spit take so impressive. I didn't want to have actual water in my
Well, actually, it's my birthday the next day, so I don't know if that's even.
That's right.
What if
Awesome. So Bernie essentially went to cable news networks, asked if they would host this Medicare for All town hall. No one was interested, so he had this really smart idea to approach digital media outlets such as TYT to help him produce it and also draw attention to it, stream it, and we will be streaming it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Young Turks. It will take place January 23rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Please don't miss it, because I think this is an important opportunity to hash out the details of his policy proposal. And what he wants is to accept questions from our audiences. And next week we will give you all of the instructions and the details on how you can submit your questions to Bernie. He's also planning on including, healthcare professionals, not just from the United States, but from other countries, to chime in on this topic. We're going to stop allowing politicians who have been bought by corporate interests drive the conversation and tell us things that are just untrue. So I want to hear from the actual experts when it comes to this topic.
That's super impressive.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Way to go.
Imagine a world believing.
I mean,
dive in.
I'd like to take credit for stuff, but overall it's Bernie.
I don't know any better. I'll give you all the credit you want.
Oh, thank you. I deserve all the credit and everything. I'm a tremendous athlete.
You make everything happen.
I make
Everything that's ever happened in the history of the world is because of you.
I make things happen more than anyone that's ever existed ever.
Like Legos.
God, everyone needs to read this whole interview and count how many lines are from the Wall Street Journal and how many lines.
I know.
This looks so like 90-10.
It is amazing. All right, let's get to some other news.
Oh man, I wish it was the English voice actor.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that a Trump lawyer had arranged a whopping $130,000 payment to a former adult film star who had what's alleged to be a sexual relationship with Donald Trump back in 2006. Now, this payment was meant to be hush money. However, Donald Trump's camp, the administration, is completely denying it. They're saying this is old news. It's completely false. We'll give you the details, and you can decide for yourself. Now, again, this was reported by the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal, at least its editorial board, has been rather pleasant to Donald Trump. So this isn't, some liberal news organization trying to mess up Trump's administration.
Might as well just be the movie.
Apparently there were leakers, I don't know exactly how many, who spoke on the condition of anonymity. These are individuals who knew about the deal that took place, who knew about the payment and settlement that took place, and here are the details that we know so far. Michael Cohen, who spent nearly a decade as a top attorney at the Trump Organization, arranged this payment to the tune of $130,000 to the woman, Stephanie Clifford, in October of 2016, after her lawyer negotiated the non-disclosure agreement with Mr. Cohen.
Friends are toys too at this point.
So, The alleged relationship took place back in 2006, and in an effort to squash any opportunity that she might have to go public with this information, they decided to allegedly pay her this money, this hush money, very close to the election, 1 month before the election. So her stage name is Stormy Daniels, and according to the Wall Street Journal, Stormy Daniels has privately alleged the encounter with Mr. Trump took place after they met at a July 2006 celebrity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe. Trump actually had married Melania Trump in 2005, and this alleged relationship occurred soon after she gave birth to their son. Mr. Cohen didn't address the $130,000 payment, but said of the alleged sexual encounter that, quote, President Trump once again vehemently denies any such occurrence, as has Ms. Daniels. Now, this is different from other allegations that were lodged against Trump during his election. Remember, there were a number of women who came forward and said that there was non-consensual sexual misconduct happening, and those accusations, unfortunately, just got brushed under the rug. In this case, they're alleging that there was a consensual sexual encounter between Ms. Clifford and Donald Trump. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. When it comes to adults engaged in a consensual situation, I don't care about infidelity. That's none of my business. None of my business, right? If it's not impacting me in any way, why should I care? Why should I get involved? But for me, the reason why this is relevant is because there seems to be a pattern, right? Let me pay this person off, hush money, hush money. And I'm concerned about possible bribery that could happen, possible extortion that could happen with other, foreign governments and things like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like this is a character flaw that should be considered.
Well, wasn't this also something that he held against Hillary Clinton for Bill Clinton's adventure? He accused him of extortion and giving hush money to other women that he was in consensual relationships with as well. So again, this comes calling back the same thing that he accuses somebody else. He himself has done before. So I think that to me is, the most
the hypocrisy, correction, and it's become so commonplace with Trump and his administration that when hypocrisy happens, I mean, we're desensitized to it. They have normalized it, and so you're right. I remember, during the election, the stuff going around regarding Bill Clinton being a rapist. Mind you, not soon after that, there were the accusations against Trump and the sexual misconduct. There was the Access Hollywood tape where he bragged about groping women. And so,
and then Jessica Drake saying at the same exact event he forced himself on her, kissed her without her consent, and she didn't come forward to receive any amount of money. She just did it because she felt like she needed to expose him. And also, like, the irony that Ivanka Trump would retweet Oprah's Time's Up to say, let's come together and fight this and fight, the basis of this movement and this campaign to eradicate sexual harassment, gender inequity. She could just turn her head and find the first person to start prosecuting.
I don't know why Ivanka Trump keeps putting herself in that situation, because is it because she lacks any and all self-awareness? I don't know, but I feel like much like her father, she doesn't stop to think about the ramifications or the response that she's going to get in regard to those types of tweets. Anyway,
so Trump says so many things that contradict each other and project some kind of sense onto it. Ivanka says so little that you project some kind of cohesive meaning to it all. Like, that's what I have no idea what she's like. I want to like her because I need someone in that family with a voice of reason for my own sanity. That's the difficult thing with Ivanka. It drove me crazy when I saw the Me Too thing. It's just like, well, time's up, tell your dad.
Tell your dad, exactly. Or another example is how Melania Trump's mission is to combat bullying.
And I'm dating Brooke Shields.
And so it just shows a lack of self-awareness. And I don't mean that Melania Trump is a bully. Actually, to be quite honest with you,
something wrong with that. I like
Melania Trump has been the winner in this presidency, and mostly because she doesn't want any part of it. So I think she's just kind of staying behind the scenes.
It makes sense if Stormy Daniels paid Trump $130,000 not to brag about having sex.
You're right. Now wait,
Don't tell anyone.
I didn't say all that. Well, look, I love sports. There's got to be more to life.
I don't get it, but I see these non-disclosure agreements of party goes like Stormy Daniels, you get your money. If even if you came out at that time in that way, you two having a consensual relationship is way better, sadly, than after Hollywood tape, which we all didn't see and didn't end up with.
Right.
To pay her off and to pay her off that amount a month before the election.
What type of tidal wave that could start, right?
Saying, I don't know.
So let's move on to the less salacious content, but incredibly important update on what the Justice Department is doing under Jeff Sessions.
Jumper, can I make it though? Got it.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions has unfortunately rescinded an Obama-era letter, a memo, that reconfirmed what the current laws are in regard to debtors' prisons. Now, we are not supposed to have debtors' prisons here in the United States, but there are certain municipalities throughout the nation that have decided that regressive taxation aimed specifically at the poor is the way to go to collect some revenue. And so, during Obama's administration, there was a letter put out that reminded officials involved in all of this that you are supposed to consider the financial burden and the poverty level of the person that you are imposing certain citations and fines on, and if they're not able to pay them, instead of creating a situation where they're in this perpetual debt, which leads to jail time, think about other ways to, carry out a punishment that's less of a financial burden. Attorney General Jeff Sessions didn't like that, and so he rescinded that memo. So essentially, he rescinded a memo regarding what the current laws are. So what is he trying to do? Encourage people to break the law? Let's give you the details. The letter, which was sent in March of 2016 to the chief judges and court administrators in all 50 states, noted that illegal imposition of fines and fees had been receiving significant attention, and that the Justice Department had a strong interest in making sure the rights of citizens were protected.
I don't really
now,
understand.
This happened because of an investigation into what police were doing in Ferguson, Missouri, what the courts were doing in Ferguson, Missouri. The Justice Department during the Obama administration had alleged in a lawsuit that officers in Ferguson, Missouri were violating citizens' civil rights in part because of their policing tactics. And how they were meant to generate revenue. So they were specifically attempting to generate revenue by, imposing fines and citations on the working poor in the area. Great. So the letter urged court officials to review their rules and procedures. It detailed 7 principles to consider when imposing fines and fees. Among them, that courts should not jail people for non-payment of fines and fees without first determining whether the non-payer was indigent and then establishing that the failure to pay was willful and that courts should consider alternatives to jail for indigent defendants. Okay, so that's the rundown of what the Obama memo indicated, but Jeff Sessions again didn't like it, so he did rescind it.
Thank you, Kevin. Another quick start here in this first half.
Going to play out, but it's interesting because Jeff Sessions, the Justice Department, and more importantly, Donald Trump during the election, really emphasized that he was the law and order candidate. And what we see time and time again is not an emphasis on law and order, but breaking the law and complete disorder.
Get that cheese out of
here. Disorder.
I'm in the corner. Hit me.
You also have poor people in jail because they can't afford their fines.
So there's federal
federalism. Like, weed is legal in California, but it's illegal at a federal level. That is a contradiction between the kinds of law that are happening in one location. We're in America, we're also in California, so weed's both illegal and legal. And frequently it is the job of the Attorney General as the mouthpiece of the Justice Department on behalf of the President to say, like, here's the law we care about. And that's
wait on it. Wait, there goes a double.
In the same way that the memo that he's overruling said, this is the law we care about. Here are our priorities here. He's, by rescinding it, saying here are our priorities. And his priority seems to be, like, try to milk the poor, and by the same token, the rich can afford to be worse, right, than the poor. So the poor can do something, keep the fine the same for both, and it's a lower percentage of someone who's riches wealth, and it cripples the same offense relative to the amount of money that person has. Cripples the hell out of one person who doesn't have as much money.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this has, like you were mentioning, Anna, this has no positive impact on public safety.
I don't know if I can get that
and it's only a profit-motivated decision made on the Justice Department's part. And even more so, I'll go a little more theoretical on this for a second.
Hold that thought for a second, because I have to respond to what you just said. It's really important. So, I actually disagree that there's a profit motive here. I think maybe it might have started off as a profit motive, but actually ends up draining resources for any given municipality. Because think about it.
How do we know they didn't?
You're going to fine poor people who can't afford those fines, can't pay those fines, and then you're going to punish them by throwing them in the jail system. As a result, who do you think pays for the jail system? Right. The taxpayers, right? So it's draining resources.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, it's draining our resources. That's right. It's not draining the federal resources or the state level. So they have to find some way to make up the money that they lost. Municipalities trying to find some way to make up the money that they lost. Federal government is trying to find some way to make up the money that they lost. So the thing is, on a theoretical level, the wealthy, the global elite are on strike. And because they are on strike, they refuse to pay taxes that the rest of us are all paying, and the equitable rates that all of us are all paying. And so their refusal to throw money into the pot that we're all collectively throwing money into means that the government has to find some other way to generate that income. And who are they going to go after? People who cannot protect themselves on a legal level. Working class folks, people of color folks. So that's what they're targeting.
Right, and so I like that you talked about that in regard to not having the resources to defend themselves, because if the Obama era memo just let these judges know, hey, you got to follow the law. And what Jeff Sessions is doing is essentially letting them know you can break the law. Well, then, if people are breaking the law, then you have some legal recourse there, right? You have the ability to fight back. But think about how incredibly expensive it is to fight back. People who are powerless, unfortunately, fall in the lower end of this two-tier justice system. And that's the most enraging part about all of this. It's picking on the powerless because you know you can, because you know they can't fight back. And it provides the perfect for them justification for expanding their prison system. Right? And so that's why we, thankfully there were amazing scholars who made the connection that these mandatory minimums, these kind of aggressive taxes on the poor, they all go towards trying to either build or expand the prison system, which, corporations profit out of, or they go towards trying to make up this debt.
And it's crazy where it manifests itself. You watch the Camp David press conference the president gave. He essentially just said that they're having a lot of success in the places where they go after the drugs harshly. You're just like that, and that little moment is enough for Jeff Sessions and other people who support the mandatory minimums to just strike and keep that stuff happening. And it's not fair. It does open a window for some plaintiff's lawyers to make a name for themselves fighting on behalf of people who are screwed by this new policy, though. So hopefully someone swoops in. Maybe they are making a name for themselves, but at least they can do so for the better.
This is when I joined.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank Brett Ehrlich and Maytha Al-Hassan for joining me. You guys want to plug something real quick before we end the show?
Honest Press Conferences on Facebook.
I still have it on.
I just wrote something actually for The Bachelor called Our Refugees, and it's about Justin Ban being a bomb and ban.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We love you. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Being out here on this court is
shoot. Everybody on the leaderboard, the top 10, they're all sharpshooters, and most of them were point guards. Maybe all of them were. I only checked the player cards for the top 5. They were all sharpshooters, pure sharpshooters at the point guard position. We finally scored 12 points, which means that we can end the game with a 4-pointer. So I'm going to go for it here. Almost a perfect release, and it drops down.